Have you ever wondered what the difference is between domicile and residency? These two terms are often used in legal, tax, and everyday contexts, but they actually mean different things. In this video, we'll break down the simple difference between domicile and residency, why it matters, and how it can affect your life, especially when it comes to taxes, legal matters, and even where you can vote. Let's start by understanding the basic definitions before diving into real-life examples and implications. Domicile is a legal concept that refers to the place you consider your permanent home. It's where you intend to return to and remain, even if you're currently living somewhere else. Your domicile is important because it determines your legal rights and obligations, such as where you pay taxes or which state's laws apply to you. Changing your domicile isn't as simple as moving. It usually requires clear evidence of your intent to make a new place your permanent home. Let's look at how this differs from residency. Residency, on the other hand, is about where you actually live at a given time. You can have multiple residences, but only one domicile. Residency is often determined by physical presence, where you spend most of your time. For example, you might reside in one state for work during the week and another on weekends. Residency can affect things like state taxes, eligibility for in-state tuition, or even local voting rights. But remember, residency doesn't always mean you've changed your domicile. The main difference between domicile and residency comes down to intent versus presence. Domicile is about your intention to make a place your permanent home, while residency is about where you are actually living right now. You might reside in several places throughout the year, but your domicile remains the one place you consider your true, lasting home. This distinction is crucial for legal and tax purposes, as different rules apply depending on your status. Your domicile determines many important aspects of your life. It affects which state's laws apply to you, where you pay state income tax, and even where your estate is handled after you pass away. For example, if you move to a new state but don't intend to stay there permanently, your domicile may still be your previous state. This can have big consequences for taxes, inheritance, and legal rights. Understanding your domicile can help you make informed decisions about moving or working in different places. Residency is important for practical reasons. It can determine your eligibility for in-state tuition, local benefits, or even where you can vote in local elections. States often have their own rules for establishing residency, such as living there for a certain number of days or having a local address. Unlike domicile, you can be a resident in more than one place, but this can sometimes lead to confusion or even double taxation if you're not careful. Legally, your domicile is the place you intend to make your permanent home. Courts look at various factors to determine your domicile, such as where you own property, where your family lives, where you work, and even where you keep your most valuable possessions. You can only have one domicile at a time, and changing it requires both physical presence in a new place and the intent to remain there indefinitely. Residency is usually defined by where you live and spend your time. States and countries may have different criteria for what counts as residency, such as the number of days you spend there, having a local address, or registering to vote. Residency can be temporary or permanent, and you might be considered a resident in more than one place at the same time, depending on the rules. Changing your domicile isn't as simple as just moving. You need to show clear intent to make the new place your permanent home. This might include buying a house, moving your family, registering to vote, and changing your driver's license. Courts may look at all these actions to decide if you've really changed your domicile. It's a big decision that can have lasting legal and financial effects. Changing residency is usually easier than changing domicile. You can become a resident of a new state or country by simply living there for a certain period, getting a local address, or meeting other requirements. However, just because you're a resident somewhere doesn't mean you've changed your domicile. It's important to keep this distinction in mind, especially for tax and legal reasons. Your domicile plays a major role in determining where you pay state income tax. Some states tax all income of their domiciliaries, no matter where it's earned. If you claim to have changed your domicile, you may need to prove it to tax authorities. Failing to do so could mean paying taxes in more than one state. That's why it's important to understand the rules and keep good records if you move. Residency can also affect your taxes, especially if you spend significant time in more than one state. Some states have rules that make you a resident for tax purposes if you spend a certain number of days there. This can lead to situations where you owe taxes in multiple states, even if your domicile hasn't changed. Knowing the residency rules in each state you live or work in is crucial for avoiding surprises. Where you're domiciled often determines where you can vote in state and local elections. Even if you reside in another state temporarily, your voting rights usually stay with your domicile. To change your voting location, you typically need to change your domicile by showing intent to make the new place your permanent home. This is another reason why understanding domicile is so important. Residency can qualify you for local benefits, such as in-state tuition at public universities, local health services, or public assistance programs. Each state or locality sets its own rules for who qualifies as a resident. Sometimes, you may need to provide proof of residency, like a lease, utility bill, or driver's license. These benefits can be significant, so it's worth understanding how residency is determined where you live. Your domicile can have a big impact on estate planning. The laws of your domicile state usually govern your will, inheritance, and estate taxes. If you move, but don't change your domicile, your old state's laws may still apply after your death. This can affect how your assets are distributed and what taxes your heirs may owe. It's important to review your estate plan if you move or want to change your domicile. Residency is often a key factor in determining eligibility for in-state tuition at public colleges and universities. Schools usually require you to live in the state for a certain period and provide proof of residency. This can save you thousands of dollars in tuition. However, being a resident for tuition purposes doesn't necessarily mean you've changed your domicile, so be sure to check the specific requirements. In divorce cases, your domicile can determine which state's laws apply to your case. Some states require at least one spouse to be domiciled there before filing for divorce. This can affect property division, child custody, and support arrangements. If you and your spouse live in different states, the question of domicile can become complicated and may require legal advice. To get a driver's license in a new state, you usually need to establish residency there. This might involve providing proof of address, such as a lease or utility bill. However, getting a new license doesn't automatically change your domicile. It's just one factor that courts may consider if there's a dispute about where your permanent home is. Your domicile usually determines where you're eligible for jury duty. If you're called to serve, it will typically be in the state and county of your domicile. Even if you reside elsewhere temporarily, your jury duty obligations remain tied to your permanent home. This is another example of how domicile affects your legal responsibilities. Some people, known as snowbirds, live in one state during the summer and another during the winter. They may be residents in both places for part of the year, but their domicile remains in one state. This can create complex tax situations, with both states potentially claiming the right to tax their income. Careful planning and record keeping are essential for snowbirds to avoid double taxation. If you move to another country, your domicile may still be in your home country, unless you clearly intend to make the new country your permanent home. This can affect your tax obligations, citizenship status, and legal rights. International moves often require careful planning to ensure your domicile status matches your intentions and legal needs. International students often face unique residency challenges. They may reside in a new country for school, but keep their domicile in their home country. This can affect their eligibility for local benefits, taxes, and even visa status. Understanding the difference between residency and domicile is especially important for students studying abroad. Military personnel may be stationed in many places, but their domicile usually stays in their home state unless they take steps to change it. This affects their taxes, voting rights, and legal obligations. Special rules often apply to military members, so it's important for them to understand how domicile works and what steps are needed to change it if desired. Digital nomads, who work remotely while traveling, may have multiple residencies but only one domicile. Their tax and legal obligations depend on where they spend their time and where their domicile is. It's important for digital nomads to track their days in each location and understand the rules to avoid unexpected taxes or legal issues. For minors, domicile is usually determined by their parents or legal guardians. If the family moves and changes domicile, the child's domicile changes as well. This can affect things like school enrollment, custody disputes, and inheritance. Once a minor becomes an adult, they can establish their own domicile by choosing where to live permanently. Where you reside can affect your employment opportunities, taxes, and benefits. Some jobs require you to be a resident of a certain state or city. Employers may also withhold state taxes based on your residency. It's important to keep your residency status up to date with your employer to avoid tax or legal issues. If you own a business, your domicile can affect where your business is taxed and regulated. Some states are more favorable for business owners, so people may try to change their domicile for tax benefits. However, authorities look for real evidence of intent and presence, not just paperwork. It's important to follow the rules to avoid legal trouble. Your residency can determine your eligibility for state health insurance programs. Many states require proof of residency, such as a lease or utility bill, before you can enroll. If you move, you may need to update your residency status to keep your coverage. Understanding the rules can help you avoid gaps in health insurance. In bankruptcy cases, your domicile can determine which state's exemption laws apply to your assets. Some states offer more generous protections than others. If you recently moved, there may be waiting periods before you can use your new state's laws. Knowing your domicile status is crucial if you're considering bankruptcy. Eligibility for public assistance programs often depends on residency. States may require you to live there for a certain period and provide proof of address. Benefits can include food assistance, housing help, or unemployment benefits. If you move, you may need to reapply in your new state and meet the residency requirement. Your domicile can determine where you can be sued or bring a lawsuit. Courts often require that you or the other party be domiciled in their jurisdiction. This affects where legal cases are heard and which state's laws apply. If you move, it's important to update your domicile status to avoid legal confusion. To register a vehicle in a new state, you usually need to establish residency. This involves providing proof of address and meeting state requirements. However, registering your car doesn't automatically change your domicile. It's just one piece of evidence if there's a dispute about your permanent home. The laws of your domicile state can affect how trusts are created, managed, and taxed. If you move and change your domicile, you may need to update your trust documents to reflect the new state's laws. This can have significant tax and legal consequences for you and your beneficiaries. Some states require residents, not just domiciliaries, to serve on juries. If you reside in a state for a certain period, you may be called for jury duty, even if your domicile is elsewhere. This is another example of how residency can create legal obligations separate from domicile. In adoption cases, your domicile can determine which state's laws apply and where the case is heard. Some states require adoptive parents to be domiciled there before starting the process. This can affect the timeline and legal requirements for adoption. It's important to check the rules in your state if you're considering adoption. Residency is often required for enrolling children in public schools. School districts may ask for proof of residency, such as a lease or utility bill. If you move, you may need to update your residency status to keep your child enrolled. Each district has its own rules, so it's important to check the requirements. Your domicile can affect which state's marriage laws apply to you, especially if you marry in one state and live in another. This can impact property rights, divorce, and inheritance. If you move, it's important to know how your domicile status affects your marital rights and obligations. Some cities and counties have their own taxes that apply to residents. If you move to a new area, you may become subject to local income, property, or sales taxes. It's important to update your residency status and understand the tax implications of moving to a new locality. Some state benefits, such as scholarships or tax credits, are only available to domiciliaries. You may need to prove your intent to remain in the state permanently to qualify. This can involve providing documentation and showing ties to the state. Understanding your domicile status can help you access these benefits. Many public libraries require proof of residency to issue a library card. This might include a utility bill or lease agreement. Residency requirements can vary, but they help ensure that local resources are available to community members. If you move, remember to update your information with your new library. Your domicile state is usually the one that issues your primary identification, such as a state ID or driver's license. This document is often used as proof of domicile in legal and financial matters. If you move and change your domicile, you'll need to update your identification to reflect your new permanent home. To set up utility services like electricity or water, you usually need to prove residency in your new home. This can involve providing a lease, deed, or other documentation. Utility companies use this information to verify your address and provide service. It's a practical example of how residency affects everyday life. Domicile is more than just a legal term. It often reflects your sense of belonging and loyalty to a particular state. It's where you have your deepest ties, such as family, friends, and community. Changing your domicile can be a big emotional and practical step, not just a legal one. If you move temporarily for work, school, or travel, you may become a resident of a new place without changing your domicile. Temporary moves usually don't affect your permanent home status, but they can create new legal and tax obligations. It's important to keep track of your residency and understand how it interacts with your domicile. To sum up, domicile and residency are related but distinct concepts. Domicile is your permanent home based on intent and deep ties, while residency is where you live at a given time. You can have many residences but only one domicile. Understanding the difference is crucial for taxes, legal rights, and access to benefits. Always keep your records up to date and consult professionals if you're unsure about your status. Thanks for watching. And now you know the simple difference between domicile and residency.